The 102.3 KJLH 21st Annual Women's Health Expo. Your health through the lens of COVID. Presented virtually by the City of Long Beach and the Fresno County Black Infant Health Program.
Family, welcome to the 21st Annual KJLH Women's Health Expo. And we are so excited because this year we are back. We wanted to be back with you by this time. We were hoping that COVID would be so far behind us that we could have our huge, big convention center with all the ladies here joining us. But once again, we're doing it virtually, and we did so well with it last year. We're excited about doing it again with you this year. So with COVID being the big topic for the last year, we're just checking in with you guys. We want to check in and see how you're doing. This year, our theme is your health through the lens of COVID. So COVID has probably played an aspect in every part of your life thus far. And so we have four wonderful people that are going to join us later on during this broadcast about what's happening with you. We're going to do a temperature check. We're going to talk about your finances, your lifestyle. We're going to talk about your relationships. We're going to talk about the kids, getting them back in school. How is that looking? We're going to dig real deep here in just a moment, and we want you to sit back and get ready to enjoy and have a real in-depth conversation with us, and let's talk about it, all right? My first guest is Aisha O'Fray-Deal. How are you?
I'm amazing.
You are our relationship expert today, and I think COVID has probably played a big role in a lot of different relationships so far, right?
As it's definitely applied some pressure to relationships. It has, and it's also done some good for relationships for sure.
I think you're right. There are two schools of thought. I've heard people say that now that we're stuck in the house together, we're having to deal with each other a lot. We're having to really have conversations that maybe they've been able to kind of smooth over when we're talking about the dynamic of husband and wife or in a relationship or your partner in a relationship. And then I've heard folks say, it's brought us closer together. We've been able to spend more time together.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, in my household alone, my husband and I, we started bike riding. We started taking hikes.
I love it.
I would say it brought us closer just because of we were stationary here, us and the kids, and we didn't have much indoor activities to do. So it brought us closer, but it's definitely ruined a lot of relationships.
I've heard that, and we were already struggling as far as when it comes to marriage and the divorce rate. Do you have any word as to what that rate looks like now that we've been having to quarantine, like it or not?
It's actually right now it's at 51%, and it's been holding steady at 51% for a few years now. But what happened was a lot of couples who went into COVID already on rocky terms, just being in that house together and not having that outlet, you'd be surprised what work does for couples when they go their separate ways and they go to work for 8 to 9 hours. And when you take work away and now you're in the house 24/7 and the relationship was already rocky, it just burst wide open.
I can imagine, because you need that breather. You need that breather to get your mind right to come back in and deal with it. Now it's like,
absolutely,
you got to have the conversation one way or another. And if you're in a relationship and you have kids on top of that, now you're having to deal. The kids aren't going to school. You're at home now. You got the whole family together, and you're trying to get along.
Yes, and so the school thing made it even worse too, because believe it or not, couples were really getting into it over the homeschooling. Yeah. One parent would say that the other parent wasn't participating in the homeschooling. One parent felt more resentful of the other parent. And that was a hard challenge because it was stressful. And it's still stressful for a lot of parents who are still, like myself, my son's upstairs doing homework.
Right. And then the children are looking to the parents for guidance, and they're, sometimes at odds.
So then you have homeschooling. You have no work outlet. Everyone's under the same household, under the same roof. Perfect disaster.
A recipe for disaster.
Yes.
Now, also what I'm reading, and I thought this was quite interesting. I like this part. That more folks are in a few months. We're gonna have some babies. We're gonna have some COVID babies. Folks are getting a little friskier.
COVID quarantine babies. But I'm gonna tell you why that's the case. I would say like around June last year, I started noticing a lot of people were kind of talking about being like sexually excited and having cravings. And I'm thinking, wait a second, this can't be just a coincidence. So I went on the hunt like I normally do. Like, I got to find some research on this, and come to find out there is a correlation between fear and uncertainty and sexual arousal. So what happens is the brain definitely releases endorphins when you are afraid, when there's uncertainty, when you're grieving. So yeah, you definitely could be sitting in a funeral, as crazy as that may sound, grieving, but also at the same time having these sexual urges, which is fascinating to me.
Well, that makes a lot of sense because we were just talking about that between the break, that when we see these movies and things are going, and this in particular one that I'm thinking about, Idris Elba was in with the girl, and they were trapped in the snowstorm, and the next thing I know, they were, all hot and heavy. And I'm thinking, you're getting ready to die. Right. Put it back in your pants.
So imagine, around the world during the pandemic, people are not even knowing where their next dollar is coming from, but they want to have sex. That's what it was. That's the reality.
Well, you're the last one on earth. You're like, let's go out with a bang.
We're gonna go out. Might as well get it in.
And I know my ladies are laughing and enjoying this conversation. But what about those that were taking it so serious about the quarantine, which is very, very important, that we were to stay away from each other? And, it wasn't about you were in a relationship, a steady relationship or something. Now I heard of people like calling up, hey, you want to quarantine together? Like, we got to do this together,
Yeah, I mean, there's some people who were single and maybe they're getting to know someone, but they didn't want to quarantine apart and be alone. So they're like, okay, listen, if we have to be in this house, let's be together. At least we both know that we haven't gone anywhere, so we're safe to be intimate, and to me, it made a lot of sense. But what was even better are the people who took advantage, who were getting to know people during the quarantine. They had all kind of quarantine dates, right? Like they watched.
Yeah. Oh no. Yeah. Zoom.
They had cocktails, and listen, a day they even had some sexting.
You mean more sexting? These jokers already been sexting.
some FaceTime, sexual appointments. So people got creative.
Oh no! Oh, some of them got really, really creative. I've heard about it. I just hope it doesn't come back to bite them. Like, okay, you did send that over.
It probably will, but they definitely got creative. They had to do it however they could.
Well, and this, I love my ladies that are watching right now, because they know that when we were together in the convention center, it would get really spicy, because the ladies are like, it's about us. We can talk about the things we want to talk about. And I love when I have guests that really will talk about it, because I read there's so many different ways COVID came into our lives. And we thought, well, how will we ever be able to manage any other way? But the creativity did come. Like, even us with the station, I've been working from home since March 13th of 2020. Okay. So for a year, I've been working from home. And then, so we figured that out. We figured out how to keep the station up and going. People have figured out how they were going to get their kids back in school. Yeah. But this is one element. The sex workers. I didn't realize we were getting so much information about sex workers. Yeah. And how they have been able to sustain. I know some folks are gonna be like, oh, Dave, you can't. You guys know me. I'm going to talk about everything that's going to be talked about. The sex workers have become very creative. Like, they have, they're all over the internet. They found ways to use their Cash App and put things up. I mean, where there's a will, there is a way, for real.
Yeah, and listen, I don't judge. OnlyFans seem to have jumped in revenue. Like, these women are still entrepreneurs. Call them what you want to call them. They are entrepreneurs, and they couldn't work in their establishment, so they took their talents to OnlyFans. Some of them were making like up to $20,000 a week. Some of them were doing better and are doing better. Than they were doing in the clubs. So they're making it work for themselves, and I applaud them.
Let me tell you, where there's a need, then that you create, you find the solution. We find
creative. Yes.
Okay, so I could talk with you all day, Aisha. We could go on and on about this part of it. but we've got to bring in Dr. Curly Bonds.
I'm doing great. Happy to be here. And I'm learning a lot so, already.
Well, we're going to mesh everybody together in a second once I get everybody in. Dr. Curly Bonds is the Chief Medical Officer for the LA County Department of Mental Health. He will help us talk about what it has done to us mentally, the good, the bad, and the ugly with COVID, as well as talk with us a little bit about the impact of it, how do we find ways to cope? Because we're still, I mean, even though we're peaking out of it, we're reopening and things like that, we still have to get acclimated again to being able to be around people without being like, hearing that cough and being like, oh, whoa, don't cough, we feel like that still. Thank you for being here, Dr. Bonds.
Thank you for the invitation. It's wonderful to be in the company of so many intelligent experts. And I guess from a mental health perspective, and my role at the county is that I'm the chief psychiatrist and the chief medical officer. So I take a broad view of what's going on across the county. And during times of emergency, like a pandemic, we're actually responsible not just for those who are indigent and at the safety net, but for the well-being of the county. And as you drive around Los Angeles, hopefully you'll see some of our posters and billboards that are up, because we know that 41% of Americans have expressed some type of distress directly resulting from COVID, meaning that they've had job loss or they've had grief from loss of a loved one, anxiety and depression, for all the things that we've talked about, the uncertainties of a future, and also fear of contagion and infection. And I would say that that has resulted in higher rates of calls to our helpline, more people seeking appointments. There has just been a dramatic recognition and acknowledgement that people are having a hard time, they're struggling. And some of the very practical ways that it manifests itself are that people are anxious, they're worried, they have a hard time focusing on what's important, including their romantic relationships. They may have difficulty concentrating, trouble making decisions. And I think it doesn't help any that we've all had to change the way that we work, or most of us have, not everybody, and that we're in front of these little screens all day and trying to focus on a Zoom meeting or a Teams meeting where your kind of mind is wandering off about, at least early on, where am I going to get toilet paper? And is my next check going to come? And those people who've had to depend on the government for assistance during this time, it's been, so many mixed messages. So there's been a lot of uncertainty. And at times it moves from the psychological into the physical. I've had a lot of clients and patients come talk to us about how they're having muscle aches and headaches and a lot of sort of quasi-neurological symptoms that are resulting in them seeking care and attention at a time when they've been kind of afraid to go to the doctor. I want to encourage all the listeners to make sure that you're taking care of regular health maintenance. If something's happening where, the normal body functions aren't operating the way they should, it may be time to see a doctor, especially if it's been over a year, just your regular exams, especially for women, and maintaining female health. And there can be a worsening of chronic problems that are aggravated by substance use. We've had people that have increased their smoking, they've increased their use of illicit substances, which is always a problem in pandemic. If you can acquire it, then sometimes people just tend to overindulge because you want to do something that helps you to escape from the reality that may not be so pleasant.
Well, Doctor, you've given us a lot of that to unpack, and all of it is so relevant with everything that's happening. When we talk about, when we first heard about the pandemic, I thought, oh, okay, well, this gives us time to slow down a little bit. And I'm thinking, okay, but I got caught up in the craze of it too. I mean, I had on the almost hazmat suit just to go to the grocery store, and I was serious about it. My friends knew how serious I was. If you brought mail, you had to leave it outside, you had to put it in the garage and things like that. So it did bring on an added anxiety for me. I figured I would be able to work for it. What I did not think of, I care for my mother, and many of the family listening and watching know that, my mama Jessie. She has been here with me 10 years, but her quality of life declined in the last 6 months. She's 80 this year, but she was used to going to a day center with other seniors and having that activity. I did not think that it would affect her as greatly as it has. Missing that routine, going to see other seniors. Now her walking isn't as, she doesn't walk on her own anymore. It really did take a toll. How do we help our seniors?
Well, first of all, she's fortunate to have someone like you in her life who's paying attention. So many of our seniors live in isolation and they feel abandoned. And I think it didn't help that for those who were, say, in assisted living situations, that visitors couldn't come. So I think one and the most important thing that we can do is to be there for them. And fortunately, a lot of the seniors now have eligibility, have gotten the vaccine, and they're able to have visitors again. And I think we need to really welcome them back into our lives and go out of our way to check on them. I would say that as we age, our senses get a little bit less sharp. People may need to have help making sure that if there are things that haven't been kept up, like making sure they have reading glasses that they can see, they have hearing aids if they need those types of devices, to help them get to care if they need it. But most importantly is to check on them, ask them how they're doing, making sure that they're getting adequate nutrition, if they need help with grooming, to assist with that. But I think also most importantly is to spend time with them. I think most older adults just feel like, hey, I've kind of been forgotten. And I think we need to really make sure that they know that they're a priority for us, put them in on our meetings, help them with the technology. A lot of them struggle with, say, virtual events and presence.
Yeah. You know, with the mental health aspect, when we talk about just people in general, so many people are now left to, in the pandemic, when they're quarantining, to deal with those thoughts on their own. But I have seen a lot of advertising for getting a therapist online where you can do that virtually. And I think that's good that those resources have been available. But I've also seen a big number jump where they were talking about suicide, especially with our young people, because they're not used to being able to sit still. How are we dealing with that? What are resources available for those that are really struggling to the point where they're thinking about taking their lives?
Well, if people don't listen to anything else that I say, I will give the phone number for the helpline that's countywide. And it doesn't really matter about your means. If you have insurance or not, they can direct you to your provider. It's 1-800-854-7771. That's for all of LA County. And also we have a website, dmh.lacounty.gov. If you search in Google just for the Los Angeles County Department of Mental Health, it will get you to our website, and there's a landing page that has all kinds of resources. There are 24/7 helplines that are both in English and in Spanish. There are peers that are waiting to help. There are people that can link you to care. And if you're having an emergency, they will try to link you to some type of immediate response team, because we do have teams throughout all of the service areas in the county that can roll out. Even during the COVID crisis, we've been busy helping people get into hospital if it's that serious. But I would say that short of that, online therapy is great. And even psychiatrists within our department, about 70% of their work over the last year has been done virtually using the same modality. Fortunately, mental health, we don't have to touch people except for maybe a nurse that checks vital signs. And for those things, you may have to go in, or if you need to get an injection. But for the most part, this type of work can be done remotely, and it's equivalent to in-person services. We really ramped up our telepsychiatry and telemental health programs, because the tool that we use is the telephone, or if we can, we try to use virtual visits, but it's about staying connected to those folks. And if you're already in care, make sure that your provider knows that you're there, and hopefully they can provide some type of accommodation to see you, if not in person, then virtually.
Well, I'm so pleased that you have that service, and that you said whether you have insurance or not. Some of the insurance companies have been very lax and been able to accommodate, a lot of folks that really need the care. They're like, look, I can't afford a co-payment. I've lost my job. Can I still see someone? And a lot of insurance companies have been very good about that. There are some, I won't call them out right now, but if they don't get it together, we're going to talk about it. There are some, though, that are just not cooperating. And it is something that really needs to be talked about now and dealt with, because when all this is over, we'll have the aftermath of dealing with those issues. But thank you, Dr. Bonds, for being here. And we're going to talk with you more too. So thank you so much. Okay. I have my very next guest, Lady Vera Stewart from the Bank of America. She's the Senior Vice President of National Performance Manager, and she has 38 years of banking experience with just Bank of America. Ooh, they love you over there. They love you. They can't do without you.
We love our clients and the companies. Thank you.
Lady Vera, folks are getting hit and they just don't know where to turn. I mean, we're hearing about funds that finally came available, but when it first started in the pandemic, folks were struggling and they didn't know, where the next money was coming from. They were already living from paycheck to paycheck, and they are really just now feeling like maybe they're getting some action. What are you hearing there from the financial industry? What are you guys seeing and hearing?
We're hearing the same thing. I think what we're really encouraging people to do is to look at either increasing their income or lowering their expenses. And in an environment like this, it's often difficult to increase your expenses, or I should say to increase your income. But by that, what we mean is look to see, are there additional hours you can get if you're working? Is there an additional gift that you have that might allow you to bring in extra income, cooking, babysitting, reviewing your pay stub? Are there some things or deductions that maybe you can pause for a moment? Maybe that contribution to a charity, or maybe some of the money you're saving for a vacation, those automatic deductions, maybe you can look at those. And then expenses. I think all of us have realized, well, I have, the ability to look at videos on my phone or on my iPad. Do I need some of the cable channels that I have? I'm not driving as much. You talked about insurance companies. Can I work with that insurance company, my cable company? We're really telling everyone, no matter where they are, just to make sure that they're reaching out if they need help. If that's reaching out to their bank to talk about making their mortgage payment, or if they're reaching out for their rental payment. We've prepared some materials that we think people will find very helpful. They're online, they're complimentary. So you can go to bettermoneyhabits.bankofamerica.com and you can see videos that will help you with talking to a creditor or dealing with savings. But we really just want to make sure that people know wherever they are, that we're happy to provide them with some help.
And that's so important because we're finding a lot of people that have been able to do it on their own, and nobody knew this was coming and how it would really affect the world, really. And so people are having to have conversations that they haven't really ever been put in that place to do, to really reach out to help. And to have that conversation with a creditor to say, look, I'm in this position. Sometimes, that ego, they're like, oh, I can do it. They really need to have a conversation. How do they put that ego aside? And are your specialists trained to kind of hear and say, let's look at some ideas?
Well, I think the wonderful thing is we all are going through this. And so we're encouraging everyone to be sensitive to what people are going through, even if they don't know exactly what to say. Right. So the important thing is to make sure we're having the conversation. Don't be afraid to talk to your creditor or your banker or your landlord. We do have some videos that you can, again, go online to bettermoneyhabits.bankofamerica.com. And there actually is one that negotiating with your creditor. And people have found that helps them before they have that conversation. But I don't want them to think that they have to do anything special. Our people, again, understand that this is a difficult time and they're responsive and they're ready to help. So you don't have to know exactly what to say, but just reach out. Because not just, banks, but whether it's student loans with the government or creditors, credit cards, I think if you just reach out, often you'll find out that there are deferments or resources that are available to you.
I think it's great that we're having this conversation. I think it's great that you have that information on your website to teach, how to do a better budget. But that's something well before COVID that I think that we should be looking at. And I think now COVID has forced us to really look at it. Do we need Hulu and Netflix and all these different things? You'll be surprised how that will add up very quickly. And so folks are having to really take a look at that. Now, if they are looking at their budget, how can they really determine what's necessary and what's not?
Mhm. You know, that's an excellent question. I always suggest that people start writing down where their money's going. I was surprised how much I was spending on food. And so, whether it's cooking at home, whether it's taking your lunch to work, once you identify where your money is going,
Mhm.
I think that will help you know where you really want to focus your efforts. We love to have those conversations about, you know, establishing emergency savings and college savings plans, and we're here for all of that. But for right now, we think for most people, what's critical is keeping a list of where your money is going and then forming a new budget based on your new reality. Maybe you don't need 3 cars. Maybe you don't need, you know, the type of insurance that you have right now or that cable. But knowing where your money's going and then preparing a new budget that's realistic based on your current income, I think is the first step.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be forever. It's temporary. It could be temporary, or at least till you get back to where you're able to do it like that again. I think everybody is trying to figure out where the next money is coming, looking for that other branch of other stream of income to come through. Are you able to help with conversations? Folks aren't sure about, and this may not be your expertise. It may be another panel. So, family, listen. People are concerned about what they can apply for and what they cannot. Do you have people there to help them to talk about the PPP and what does that need to look like? And, people are afraid. Some people are like all in. I've heard people going all in, and we'll talk about that because some of y'all been doing some things you ain't supposed to do. I don't get their money,
Absolutely.
come back and get you. But for those that really need it, there's so much talk around it. Some people aren't reaching out and really do qualify, and they need to get that assistance. They're missing out.
You know, that is so true. And again, it goes back to asking for the help and realizing it's there, whether it's our business owners who are applying for the PPP or trying to understand what's involved in order to have at least a portion of that forgiven. We are a resource. We've actually put together a deck, and I kid you not that the topic is financial guidance to help with the impacts of a coronavirus. And I'm going to share that with you. It details some of those resources that are available, whether it's with your rent or whether it's student loans or whether it's getting stimulus payments. And so it's a good start, I believe, just to understand some of the resources that are available to you. It's okay to ask for help, I think is the thing that we would emphasize right now, and help is available.
Did you hear that, ladies? It's okay to ask for help. I mean, you've been doing it and holding it down. No one knew this was coming like this and it would affect our families like this. Ask for help. It is out there. It's available. And that's why KJLH, we felt it's so important that we have this big conversation around COVID and how that's affecting our ladies out there. Oh, wow. This conversation is getting really, really good. And we have one more person to add to it. I'm so excited that she's able to be here with us. I have Dr. Adana Brown. She's here, the local District West Superintendent. Now, she knows kids. She knows kids. And we have been talking so much about our theme this year, which is COVID, our health through the lens of COVID. But children are so important during this time as well. And I say that she knows kids, she knows parents. She knows teachers and educators. She's been at the LAUSD for 21 years is where you had spent that. Oh my goodness. Yes. That's a lot of kids, a lot of parents, a lot of personality.
Definitely.
She was assistant principal before she started. I mean, you're just so busy. You started STEM programs, Spanish and English dual programs. You right now overseeing 155 schools.
Yes.
Are you tired?
I am, but the kids keep me energized, and it's just an amazing body of work that we get to do in terms of developing leaders and principals and teachers and working with families. So definitely exhausting, but it's so worth it when you see the outcomes.
Now, add up on top of that, all of that that you have to do with a pandemic and having to do it virtually. And, we're all talking about what it has done to us as, parents and adults, but our kids, it's affecting them as well, right? Big time.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Absolutely. I think we forget how, resilient our kids are, but we also take for granted how resilient we expect them to be.
Yeah.
And so they haven't missed a beat. We transitioned to virtual learning March 16th of 2020, and our families and our teachers really transitioned, with making sure that everything moved digitally.
Mhm.
And we had kids who were 5 years old zooming, for the first time ever, using platforms that we had never even thought of using, or that were a part of the corporate America,
Yes.
and not certainly an educational world. But we pivoted quickly, and these kids and these families, they adapted so well. And so now we have a generation of technologically skilled thinkers and learners. And so, socially, are they at a disadvantage? Absolutely, because they need to be around their friends and their peers and running and laughing and playing and hugging and touching.
Yes.
But at the same time, they are so much farther advanced than where they were a year ago.
Yeah. I think I should be doing a story soon. I'll be hearing about it. The parents giving you all raises out of their own pockets.
Absolutely.
I think they're going to come up with a fund or something. Because parents, I think they understood how difficult your job. They know that you guys really put in the work, but when they really had to really get in there, they really see that you guys put a lot in, and having to deal with so many children at one time, and they only have 2, 3, 4, maybe top, some people more, but sometimes
Yes.
it's just their one. They were really feeling it.
Absolutely. I mean, even as a parent, watching my child's classes, on the Zoom, and there's these 30 little faces, and they're all talking at once, or they all want to share something that's not even relevant to the lesson. It's like, people have a newfound respect for the teaching profession, for teachers, and just say, God bless them. They're so patient. These teachers have been amazingly patient with these kiddos who, you're trying to teach them different things, and, how to share their screen, or how to, bring up a Google Doc or whatever. But, and all at the same time, there's things going on in the background, and so
Right.
that's the other part of it. It also created a sense of empathy within staff members, because you really get a firsthand look inside the homes of some of our families, not only just our children, our students, but also our teachers, to say some of these teachers are taking care of elderly parents and trying to teach at the same time, parents with dementia and Alzheimer's, and or family children who are in a 10 family apartment, one bedroom apartment with 10 people in it, and mom is at work and dad's at work, and they're trying to babysit. And so there was so much real life learning going on. And it really created this compassion and empathy that we built into the lessons around, social emotional learning and wellness, and just taking care of yourself. So it became not so much about the deficiencies of the academics, but also the deficiencies and the gaps that our families struggle with on a day-to-day basis.
Right. So when those kids come into your classroom when it was in person, you didn't know all that they've dealt with all this before they even made it to that classroom, to that desk.
Absolutely.
It gave you a lot of insight. I'm sure that was frustrating, but were there any other things that really frustrated you about so far that we've been in the pandemic?
Not so much a frustration. I mean, people had issues with Wi-Fi. It really let us know where our deficiencies were technology wise, not even as a district, but as a nation, as a state, that, there was so many different gaps in terms of, we saw cities that offer citywide Wi-Fi for free, as opposed to certain other, areas where they don't have Wi-Fi or they have poor service or people are relying on hotspots that barely work. So it really pointed out the gaps, I would say, as a nation that we have been enduring, the food insecurities that families had to endure. So just some of those things that you really started to see, wow, this is crazy, because we live in our own bubble that we take for
Right.
granted. And one thing I'm really proud of is that our district stepped up to provide that for families. We've served well over millions of meals to families every single day, 3 meals a day to
Parents,
families.
to parents, that means a lot. That
A
takes
lot.
one less thing off their list of things they had to deal with or still deal with.
Absolutely.
Now that the kids are returning to in class, well, some of them are, the little ones are back in class. How is it going so far? How are they getting back acclimated? Are they remembering to stay their distance? And, but they're just excited, I'm sure.
They are excited. So this is the first week so far. We've had 61 schools go back, elementary only. Next week, all elementary will return. And then the following week will be middle school and high school. But this week so far has been amazing. We've seen very little tears that we thought we would see, with kindergartners going to school for the first time, but they knew their teachers already, they knew them from online. So it wasn't a new face. And the kids have kept their mask on. They're sitting in class. They're on the yard. They're playing, they're running, they're laughing. Teachers are excited. Principals are excited. Families are excited. It was just amazing to see this past, over the course of these last few days, how the energy shifted, with just such a positive feeling vibe in the atmosphere, with the kids coming back. And there were celebrations, there were music, there was balloons, it was DJs on the yard. It was all of that. And
kids are excited to go to
kids
school.
were so excited. Yes. Parents were skipping off like, you know what, so it was amazing. It was so funny. I ran into a lady on the street as I was leaving a school 2 days ago, and she said, are they back? And I was like, who? She said, the kids, are they back? I said, yeah, they're back. I said, well, in phases. Yes, they're back. She said, whoo, thank you, Lord. She was like, because I am tired of these kids. I am tired. And she said, I am a grandmother and I am so glad. She said, I am thanking the Lord. She said, I will never complain about dropping off and picking up my grandkids. She said, because God is good. I said, I couldn't do nothing but laugh. I said, yes, ma'am.
Because if you think about it, when the kids were out of school, parents had to find ways to daycare. Everybody had to chip in. Grandma, auntie, uncle, everybody had to figure it out. And wherever they were is where they had to do class online or whatever. So it has really brought a lot of families together.
It has.
Now that they're going back to school, everybody's praising the Lord.
Yes. Yes.
So there are still some kids that are at home, still learning it from home. What kind of advice can you give to the parents? What can they look forward to for those kids that are still at home, though, until you guys phase them back in?
So until we phase them back in, well, we have two groups. We have parents that opted to stay virtual.
Mhm.
And so they didn't want to bring their students to an in-person campus, and that's okay, because they'll still get their same teacher and their same instruction. And then the families that are waiting for next week, I would say, make sure that you have your baseline COVID test, because every kid has to have a baseline COVID test before they start school, whether they start next week or the following week. We have to make sure every family has access to what's called the Daily Pass app. Our district utilizes developed an app. So when families show up, they already just show the QR code that indicates that they've answered the screening questions already, where they don't have a temperature, they haven't been exposed to anybody, they have a negative COVID test. So they show up, there's no line, they scan the QR code and their child just enters. So it's a really smooth process that we have developed as a district. And so as long as parents have that baseline COVID test, they're registered through that parent portal, meaning they can access all their child's information. and they have this daily pass. They can enter and bring their kid to school and ready to start with no problems.
So let's say the parent says, okay, I want to keep my child at home, but then they realize I might want to take them. Can they do that? Can they switch which way they want to do it in mid-semester or where in mid-session?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So we've allowed entry points every 2 weeks for students who want to transition from at home to in person. Obviously you can take your child from in person to at home anytime you want, because they're coming out of a cohort.
Right.
But anytime they're coming into a cohort, we have to make sure that it's every 2 weeks in order to maintain that contact tracing system. So we are offering families that option, but we're not turning any kids away. We want kids in class, we want them in person. And so as long as they get that baseline testing done, and establish that negative COVID test, then, we're welcoming them into the classroom.
When they're in the classroom, are you guys talking to them about what's happened over the last year with COVID, or are we just getting right back into the books? Do they have questions for teachers too? Or are they telling on their parents, Mama just didn't know how to do this, and Daddy?
So we have that social emotional wellness time, those check-ins that we do with the students, 30 minutes throughout the day. But pretty much the teachers are, ready, just jumping right into their lessons. It's a time right now to build culture with their kids, build that in classroom climate, because we know learning at home is a lot different from being in class. There are a lot of breaks. There are lots of times to go to the bathroom and go to the kitchen and get a snack. And so there's a lot of that, just building back into systems and routines that our teachers are actually trying to work on with kids, especially the kindergartners.
Mm-hmm. So once they go, they come, but they're back in class. What should parents make sure they're doing at home to make sure that the child is still safe from COVID, that they're still making sure they're going to be safe to be able to come back to class? What can we make sure that we're doing at home so we can continue to come back in the classroom?
Absolutely. I would just say, first and foremost, vaccinate your family members, those who can be vaccinated. That's so important. Get them vaccinated because we want to be able to protect our community. We want to be able to protect our grandmas and grandpas and, aunties and uncles. And we want to be able to protect those people that are at the most vulnerable, that children will be coming home to. So that's the first thing. And for those families that perhaps haven't decided on the vaccination yet, I would just say, continue to wear your mask, continue to exercise precaution, making sure, that wherever you are, if you're out and about, you're wearing your mask. If you're around extended family members or people who are not a part of your immediate bubble, making sure that you're still, exercising precaution and safety and washing your hands and wearing your mask, because now is not the time to let our guard down. If we want to really get to a place where we can open up completely, and I believe we'll get there hopefully by June or July, we have to continue to exercise those safety precautions.
Well, I tell you, I want to congratulate LAUSD. You guys have really put a lot of thought into how to get our kids back into the classroom. I like the fact that you did not let people pressure you into doing it too soon. You took your time to really figure it out and to see what really made sense and common sense. And that you guys have opened up, I believe it was 33, you guys are going to do 33 vaccination sites in communities for families. So if they decide they want to go get the vaccine, that it's available to them. And that's really huge. And
that is huge.
It is huge. Yeah.
So we launched one of the first vaccination sites at one of my schools, which is Washington Prep High School, last week. And as you know, Washington Prep is in the heart of South Central LA. And so really bringing that resource to an underserved community, it was a big deal. We are the only district that has vaccination sites at their actual campuses. So that was an amazing lift for us to be able to bring this resource to our families and keeping our families safe, and also making it easier for our families to say, hey, you know what? I have access to something, and it's okay for me to send my kid to school because they'll be protected. They won't be bringing back anything to the family or to the home. And so there was really a heartfelt story at one of our young ladies at one of the sites. She's a senior at the high school, and she brought her dad to get vaccinated, and she brought her brother to get vaccinated. And they asked her, hey, why are you getting vaccinated? What's your purpose? What's your why? And she said, last year my mom and my sister died of COVID. So she was like, this is why we are here getting vaccinated. So we take for granted a lot of things in terms of our health, and why we need to do certain things. And a lot of people, it's not real for them until it's real, what I mean? And so for her story was just like, wow, like this is why this needs to be a resource in every single community.
Yeah. Well, I tell you what, Dr. Brown, I could talk to you all day about this. We got to get everybody in on this. Everybody needs to get in on this conversation. I love that each of us can all add and contribute to the conversation. And let me tell you, from our families to your families, bless your hearts, and thank you for getting them back in school.
Yes. And one thing I will say is that we are definitely looking for donations for our kiddos. We have one huge donation coming from one company so far with playground equipment, because as you know, kids can't share playground equipment right now. They can't share balls and jump ropes and hula hoops. And so one company did step up. They said, Dr. Brown, what do you need? I said, I need a jump rope for every single kid, because they're going to just be on this yard running in a circle. Yes. Other than that, I said, so the more you guys can spread the word for nonprofits or businesses that you just want to donate to our elementary kiddos for playground equipment, so every kid can be, play with a ball, and they can't share a ball right now. So every kid needs a basketball or a hula hoop or something. Just really getting that word out. That would be huge for our kids to be able to have something to play with while they're on the yard, socially distanced.
Yes, we'll get it done. We're going to put up information. We'll put up a number where we can reach you, and these companies can get in touch with you and get these resources to you. So
absolutely.
Yeah, we got to support you guys all the way.
Definitely.
Okay, so everybody, let's get in on the conversation, because there's so much more we got to talk about, getting everyone. If you guys are just joining us, we are having an in-depth conversation with some absolutely fabulous guests. It's your health through the lens of COVID, and it's getting ready to get good. Let's get to it. All right. Now I want everybody to just come in together and we just have some good old conversation, because, and if you feel like you can answer this, raise your hand and just start talking. But this is just how our lifestyle has changed over the last year or so. We're talking about having conversations with each other. How do you have a conversation with people that you're living with now, your husband or your boyfriend, about, look, I can't bring in this amount of money anymore. How, we're gonna need to cut down. How do you, from one point, Aisha, have a conversation where you may be already kind of like this?
Yeah.
And then Lady Stewart, how do you bring it in, like, maybe I can just show the statement that we're looking, like this. And then Dr. Bonds, you tell us how we come out with it in fair. So we'll start with you, Aisha.
What's interesting is the year of COVID, my husband and I, we were looking at budgets just because I just happened to just want to know how much money we've been spending coming out of Christmas and skiing. Yes. And so looking at the money we spent between December and February, it was like, oh my God. And then COVID happened. And I'm not gonna lie, part of me was like, okay, we're sitting still right now. So that money that we spent crazy in December to February was at a standstill. But it did change. Even now, it changed the way we spend money, because from one day to the next with this virus and pandemic, I don't know what's going to happen. So it did, like even now, my car is paid off. And normally I would go run and get a new car. But right now, I just want to just stick with my car, because my car is great. But I don't want to go and just get a new one now, just because I just don't feel comfortable like that anymore. So I'm being more mindful of stuff like that. I can't live this year like I did last year or in 2019.
So how do you have a conversation with that significant other that's saying they still want to live like that, but you, the partner that's saying, look, we have to look down the road. Is it difficult to have those conversations? How do we start that conversation? Is there a good way to start it? Or
I would hope that couples were already having that conversation, because if you just start having the money conversation during COVID, you're in trouble.
I think hopefully couples have been having those conversations previously, but even if they were not, I want you to start. You have to start somewhere. And so it's not the right time when you're already stressed and it's at the end of the day. So just like you schedule other things, we'd encourage you to schedule time to have that conversation with your significant other. And I think it's a good idea to have a budget, a plan, what you're going to talk about during that time. And perhaps it's every Sunday afternoon and you review your expenses, what's coming in, what's going out. But I think having those conversations and scheduling those conversations is really the way to go.
Yeah.
I think I like that idea, because no one is kind of like bombarded, like no one's ambushed. This is what we're talking about. Let's everybody get in the right mode. Let's, if we have to have a glass of wine, calm everybody down. Let's talk about it and allow for the honesty to happen. I like that. I like both of those. Okay, Dr. Bonds. Okay, so have the conversation. It doesn't go well.
Well, first of all, let me just say I agree with what my co-panelists have said already. I always try to tell people that when the conversation goes south, try not to get too attacking. You don't want to make someone defensive. So use me statements. I'm feeling what I've observed, what I think. Because if you start with yourself, then you're not passing judgment. You're just saying, hey, these are my emotions and I'm trying to put them out there. And I think when you start accusing people and attacking them, it's like, you did this, why do we see this on the bill? Then it makes people kind of feel like I'm shutting down now because I feel attacked, I feel judged. And if you can avoid those types of scenarios, it's a lot better. But I think there has to be some reality to this. You have to tell people that, can we have time to talk? And you might want to ask permission. Sometimes the answer may be no, in which case you might say, well, when can we talk about it? If we can't talk about our budget and our finances, but I want to have a real conversation with you about where we're going. And I think people who are in the relationship for the right reason, not just for the here and now, for the immediate gratification of that dopamine surge that Aisha talked about, is really about talking about what is our long-term plan? And are we going to be able to get there going down the path that we're going? And if not, how do we redirect? And, if all else fails, sometimes you have to call on a higher power to help you in those situations, which we can also talk about.
Jesus, take the wheel, take the check.
I was getting ready to say that everything he said is correct, because when you use we and us, it disarms the other person, immediately. But even with that, the couples that didn't make it through COVID are the couples, because you shouldn't wait until COVID to have those conversations. I would think before you enter a relationship or marriage, those conversations happen. But if you're just starting to have them during COVID, those are the relationships that broke under the pressure, because money issues and things like that, they fall apart when a relationship is happy before COVID. So I mean, COVID will bust it wide open for sure.
So now let's talk a little bit about this, and you guys can all jump in on this too. Now, not just my spouse, my husband, my wife, my significant other. These kids. Yeah, no, I'm kidding.
Girl, listen.
This homeschooling, the interaction with the kids want more. The kids are like, they don't understand it. Why can't I go play with my friends? Why can't I get a new G.I. Joe? Why can't, they want more than G.I. Joe these days. What's the new game? So how do you handle with the kids, Aisha? How do we have still a healthy relationship with our children and still know that we got to be providers as well?
Yeah, my daughter is 9. She went back to school. She didn't really like the homeschooling. She was just too distracted. I would go in her room and she's doodling and okay, listen, this ain't gonna work. My son his energy is a little bit more sensitive. So he's home. He's in the 8th grade. And so it was a lot, because these teachers, they were very stressed out. They were trying to learn the homeschooling system. Us as parents, it was all over the place, and it was overwhelming even for me. I still had work to do. So it was a lot. Harper did go back to school. And even with that, she was kind of doing half a day, half school, half home. And it was overwhelming. My husband goes to work. So of course it falls on me. And it was a lot. And it's still a lot sometimes with the computer systems and my son not being able to get access to the, to the Google Meets. And we have to email the teachers and she doesn't see the emails. And I have so my son, just make sure you let them know and document that we're trying to get on. So that way you don't get marked absent. And a few times he has, and I have to call the school. It's a lot. It's a lot. And you would think he's in the 8th grade and he's older and it should be easier, but it's not. It's still a lot. It's still a lot.
Well, I think there's a whole new appreciation for teachers. I think
That's
everybody's voting like, give them more money.
Yes. Yeah. They deserve it. They deserve it. God bless them.
Now, Lady Stewart, Lady Vera, look, the kids can't understand why we can't go out to eat all the time, why we can't, just spend all the money on the video games. How do we use this time as a teaching lesson to our children about money rather than them think that they're being punished because we can't do as much as we would normally do?
Another great question. I think one of the things that has worked really well, especially with people who have small children, they're making cooking at home fun. If we do well with our schoolwork today, this evening, let's make pizza together. And you can do that in a way that saves money. It's a family activity that gets everyone involved. I think one of the other things that people are finding is, again, you want to set budgets that are realistic. If you save $1 of your allowance, we can put that toward the dream vacation we're going to go on next year. But something so that every member of the family, again, age appropriate, is involved in the effort. I know kids, adults, we all want immediate gratification. And so I think making it something that is current, we can have that pizza party this evening, or saving for that trip next year, helps you to make sure that you're accomplishing the short-term goals as well as the long-term goals.
I really like that idea. I have a cousin with children. What she's done is made it a contest as who can save the most money by a certain time. So you should see the little ones just like they're actually going to try to take the other's money to put it in theirs.
Oh my gosh. My kids too. My daughter has $363 that she has saved. You know how much my son has? 0. He takes his money and spends it in the video game. My daughter's like, I'm holding on to my money and I don't want to spend my money. But what Vera was saying is correct. We learned how to bake cookies from scratch.
I love that.
In the pandemic. But I want to know what Dr. Bond has to say about the weight gain.
We're going to talk about that.
Yes, I gained 20 pounds and I want to know what how it impacted their mental health. I lost it, but psychologically, I was kind of thrown off.
No. I think for everyone, mental health has been a big issue. With children, though, especially, I want to keep it on children for a minute. The children having to be under this strict regard with learning from home now. They're not around their other friends. They're being told that all this craziness is happening in the world and they're not really sure how to process it. How have the children been affected and how can we help them?
Well, again, it starts with having conversations about what their experience is and noticing things that they give you small clues. Sometimes children begin what is called misbehaving or acting out in different ways. But I think we tend to point out those negative activities, those negative behaviors, more than we do catch them being good, which I think any child psychiatrist or psychologist would say, you want to acknowledge and reward good behavior. As Vera said, when they're doing something and you want to reward them, let's make it a pizza night. Let them know that, hey, you spent all that time on Zoom with your schoolwork and you got your homework done on time. We need to have a reward for that. And then to plan around that. But I think you also need to know when those behavioral disturbances get to the point where there's things that just can't be tolerated. If there's any type of violence or self-injury or just real isolation, shutting down, not eating, not sleeping, is when you might need to go seek some professional help. But I think making sure that they're able to interact to the extent that it's safe with colleagues. I think going back to school is a very healthy thing for kids. I was never a big fan of homeschooling, although I know that there are some circumstances where it does make sense. But I think for most of us, we're social creatures. And so to be able to preserve those play dates within the bubble to the extent that you can. And also, I'll tie this in because we're weaving, right, about the obesity. Childhood obesity is an epidemic in this country. And I think to the extent that it's still very healthy to go out to playgrounds, I know at some point they were closed, but now they're opened up again, to encourage kids to be more active, because we are all experiencing the quarantine 15, or in some cases the quarantine 50. So tell them that we're going to go for a walk, we're going to spend time together, we're going to go to the beach, we're going to, try to surf a little bit, we're going to try to swim, do all those things that maybe because we've been pent up inside, getting outside, experiencing the sunshine. I mean, our people need vitamin D, and it's hard to get it with the quarantine going on. So getting that sunshine exposure, it helps normalize sleeping patterns, what we call the circadian rhythm, just the wake sleep pattern, trying to normalize things and getting as much back to a ritual and a routine as you possibly can, because kids really need that.
I thought maybe you could help me. My daughter is 9. And when it comes to like me watching CNN and just watching what's going on in the country with COVID, she gets, it does something to her. Like she comes in, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to. And it's like she doesn't want anything. We can't talk about, even if it's something positive, she just doesn't want anything to do with it. And I don't want her to be afraid. It's almost like she's afraid, but she doesn't want no parts of it. And she's more afraid than she is wanting to know anything about it. How do I handle that? Because I don't want her to be afraid. I don't want her to have to walk around the house like this, la la la, la like she does.
You want her to feel empowered.
Yes, yeah. How do I help the fear?
Well, I can't speak specifically to your daughter because, as I said, every kid is an individual, every person is different. But I'll give you sort of general thoughts and concepts, which is that adult media, and I'm not just talking about only fans or fans only, adult media like the news, the 24-hour cycle on cable, is not designed for all ages. And it may well be that she's telling you that I can't process this. And one option is to limit the exposure, to try to do it during times that she's having playtime or nap time, so that you don't expose her to those images, because it can be scary for a lot of adults. And I tell this with the adult patients, that you have to sometimes come up with a schedule for how you're going to consume media. Because as we know, the CDC, Dr. Fauci, all those people are coming at us 24/7. We don't necessarily need that. We weren't designed to be consuming that much information continuously. The other thing is to try to break it down and to ask her if she has any questions, to talk about it when the TV isn't on, to just say, what did you see? What was your experience? Help her to understand to the extent that she can.
Okay, thank you.
I love that. And if I could just add, every child, every person is different, but looking at it in terms of rewards for getting the schoolwork, what have you done? What we did is walking in the backyard. And it was amazing because it helped with some of that weight gain, but it also created a safe space where my son felt comfortable sharing how he was processing some of the things that are going on. So whether it's that family car ride, that's also another bonding time where you can hear how they're processing things. These are inexpensive family things, that walk around the block, the walk in the backyard, the car ride. It can really help with some of the mental health issues and some of the other challenges that we're seeing with COVID.
I agree. Thank you, Vera.
Boy, that's so important to really think about it, because we have to look at how it's affecting us, because our kids are watching us too. They're looking to us for guidance. So if we have the anxiety and the fear and all that, then they're processing like, mommy, daddy is upset. What am I? I'm supposed to, or I will feel those same things, and how can I help? And they look for their ways to how to interject and be a part of the solution as well.
Yeah.
When we talk about this, it really did affect us, I think, in a point where, 'cause I know for myself, I've always felt like, okay, when it happened, at first I was very concerned. Then I went through the phase of, this is cool. I like working from home. You know, I don't have to ever go back in the station ever again. I don't have anybody breathe on me. You know, I can just do this here. But then that other part of my life was missing. The part that wants to travel, the part that feels like I'm missing out on something like that. You know, or even you know, the when it comes to relationships, Aisha, folks just meeting and having that interaction. You know, how do we, now that we're coming up out of this, transition back into it? When is too soon to get back into travel, and when is too soon to start gathering again, and you know, and having those? Each of you just chime in as you like.
I'm vaccinated at this point. I'm still careful though because of my kids. I don't want to be a carrier, and I can still catch it technically. But I'm traveling this week for the first time. I'm going to Arizona on Friday, and I just don't want to live in fear, but I'm still very cautious. And I teach my kids to be cautious, and my husband's cautious, but I don't want to live in fear, but I'm not going to overdo it either. It's still out there, and I'm still keeping that in the front of my mind. That's it. But I don't want to live in fear anymore, and I don't feel the anxiety anymore. And that's the good thing.
And that's the good thing to let everybody know is that, you know, a lot of people are trying to debate the vaccine. Yay, nay, you know, we're suspicious of this and all this kind of things like that.
Yeah.
But even though a lot of people, there's misconception that comes with the vaccine. People get a false sense of security with the vaccine. They think, oh, I can't get it. Yeah, you can still get COVID. The vaccine is simply to, if you do contract it, that the hope is that you do not die from it.
Yeah.
Or that you're not hospitalized. That's what the vaccine is for. It's never, ever 100% guarantee that you won't get COVID.
Yeah.
So it's important that a lot of people get more understanding about that. But now, which of the other two here want to jump in about lifestyle? How quickly do we get back into our routine?
You know, I can take a stab at that. And we agree being vaccinated is a wonderful thing to do to help us to move toward getting back to that. But I think there are also some things, some lessons that we've learned in COVID that I don't think we want to forget. We don't have to necessarily run around and spend money on everything, you know, to be happy. I think we found some real value in some of those inexpensive family exchanges, whether it's on Zoom, you know, planning that next vacation, talking about where we've been, and really just bonding. I'm hopeful that some of those things that allow us to save for emergencies and save for the future will really be a part of our new normal. I think I look forward to some of the, you know, events out with the girls eating or vacations, because I'm not going to take that for granted, and maybe I won't do it as often. I'll save a little more in case there's a rainy day. But I think that's one approach, to not be in such a hurry to get back to everything the way it was, you know, a year and a half ago, but to really take some lessons from this experience.
Yeah.
Dr. Barnes, you're on vacation. When are you getting back in the air again?
Well, let's just say that I planned a little bit of travel. I'm still not going out of the state yet, though, because as my colleagues have said, you have to take small steps. And I mean, I've gotten on one airplane, but it was a 1-hour flight. And other than that, I feel like the time will come when I'm ready to travel outside of the country, because it's not safe everywhere. And I would say that we still need to protect ourselves. I would be remiss, though, as a physician, if I didn't encourage everybody who's listening to our voices to please, when it's available to you and when you can get an appointment, do get the vaccine. I know that there are a lot of historical and emotional reasons why people choose not to, but having seen this up front, the risk that you take with COVID is far, far, far worse than what could happen as a result of not being vaccinated and getting this illness, because it is devastating. So I'll get off my soapbox now. In terms of reentry, I think you have to think about what your situation is. You know, I've been an essential worker through all of this, and I have a department that we've all felt like we need to have at least 2 feet in the door 1 day a week, minimum 2 days a week, and we're slowly ramping up. We're expecting people to begin to come back. And part of it is because there are those people out there who need us. As much as Zoom therapy works well, it's not the same as having that face-to-face in-person interaction. And certainly when it comes to emergency situations, it's hard to get someone who's hallucinating and delusional to talk to you through a screen. So there are times when we really have to be physically present. But for me, I would say I have made some adjustments. I have my backyard gym, and I've enjoyed the YouTube videos that I've downloaded. I've experimented with yoga, meditation, all of those things that are grounding. I wouldn't have done that, had I been able to go to my gym, but I took the money that I saved up on not paying for a gym membership to buy equipment that I could do things simpler and easier. And I honestly don't know that I'll go back to paying those dues every month. So it's about making choices that move us forward. And I would say the same thing is true about re-entry into life in the world.
Well, those home improvement projects that I had, I was always traveling and moving so fast. I'm like, oh, I'll get to it. I think I've done just about everything I wanted to.
Everything.
You guys have been awesome today. I want each of you just to leave us with some great information as we hope to be getting back to our routines, getting back to our lives in a comfortable way, something for us to fill our spirits with, our souls with. And you can start, Aisha, there.
I guess I would say when it comes to relationships and where the listeners or viewers are right now, just stay true to yourself, be transparent. Healthy relationships aren't about whether you're in a monogamous relationship or not. It's about being transparent. It's about honoring where you are and communicating that effectively. It's not just about romantic relationships. It's also about your relationships with your family members, your children, your siblings, and your friends. Make sure that you, above all else, you create your boundaries. You draw them where you need to, and you stand on it. And at the end of the day, anyone that you lose from drawing boundaries didn't need to be in your life to begin with. And at the end of the day, and when it all comes down to it, again, just stay prayed up and stay in peace. Keep the faith, and again, move forward with honesty and with integrity. You can't go wrong.
I love it. I love it. All right, Lady Vera.
All right. I really believe in families leaving a financial legacy, for their children, their children's children. And that legacy may be, one of debt, or it may be one of really managing your resources well. And so I think it's challenging during these times to throw up your hands, but you actually still have so much control over how you spend the resources that have been allocated to you. So I think it's important to ask for help. I think it's important to remember our children are watching. And I think it's important to utilize all of the resources that are available to you. And if, at Bank of America, we can help you with, better money habits at bankofamerica.com, whether you go into one of our local financial centers or whether you call us, and I didn't give that number, and I probably should. If you just want to call 1-800-432-1000 to make an appointment to meet privately with a specialist, I think that's the thing to do. Just know that we're here to help you because it's important. Money matters. And so you want to make sure that you do leave a good legacy for your children and your children's children. Thank you.
Generational wealth. Dr. Bond.
So I'm going to throw in something that occurs to me as I think about all the different components of well-being and wellness, which is there's the physical, there's the mental, there's the emotional, but there's also the spiritual. And we haven't really talked about how people of faith have really been challenged during this time because churches have, for the largest part, been shut down. A lot of people haven't been able to go and worship in person. If that is important to you, and if it's a part of your life, it's time to reconnect. I think those limitations are beginning to fall. And for those people who rely on a higher power, God in most cases, then it's really important to not have your faith shaken by this. About a third of Americans have found that their faith was increased by COVID. And I don't think there are too many people who haven't prayed that this would end. So now is a time when it's a good thing to reconnect. We have this expression at the Department of Mental Health that none of us is well until all of us is well. So I would say that this has been a collective pause button for our society. Don't try to get back to everything the way it was, because it wasn't the greatest if you think about traffic and crowds and all of those things. So do a checkup from the neck up and take care of you, because if you don't put on your own air mask, you can't help anybody else after that.
Mm-hmm.
I love that.
Well, I tell you what, we're going to put, ladies, you're watching, we're going to put all of their contact information up here at the very end. So we'll put your Instagrams up and all that good stuff, how we can reach you guys and get further information from you guys because you've been so valuable to us. And that's what we wanted, our KJLH Women's Health Forum that has grown from a little bitty church to, we were in the big LA Convention Center, the Long Beach Convention Center, where we have thousands of women before us, to now we've moved with technology and doing it virtually where we can even touch even more people. So I thank all of you for joining us. It is so important, ladies, that you're watching, that even though we had to make some changes, we were challenged. COVID came in and it turned everything upside down, but we're making a turn. We still have to be cautious and social distance and wear our mask. Might as well get used to it. Put some studs on it, decorate it.
Have one of those.
Find a way. That's your new lipstick of sorts, all right?
Mhm.
But the main thing is to stay centered. Know that we are coming out of it. Keep living, keep trying to do your very, very best. And you can do that. Just keep living and live well. All right, live well. All right, ladies. Again, check on this. You can rewind this, hang out with us a little bit more, or you can find some more great stuff to watch and get some great information from. A lot of resources here available. Click on or hang out with us again. We appreciate it. Thank you, everyone.
The Radio Free 102.3 KJLH 21st Annual Women's Health Expo, brought to you virtually by the City of Long Beach and Fresno County Black Infant Health Program.